Hello, and welcome to this week's Story Behind the Stories for the October 2nd edition. Certainly blown by fast. And I'm your host for the first time ever, Casper Wehrhahn. My pronouns are they, them, and their. And I'm not by myself. I'm joined today, of course, by my co-worker, Paterson. And we are going to take you through the paper. And starting off this week on our front page, of course, as always, it's a bit of a turn of the seasons, of course, as you know, as it is October. There was somebody out at Clear Lake enjoying the last bits of summer as we rapidly switch to fall. It's a wonderful, wonderful front page there. Of course, seeing it here doesn't do it justice, so be sure to pick up a paper. This was one of our submissions, actually, from a few weeks ago, and we are certainly glad that we were able to use it. Marvelous pop of color there.
Yes, absolutely. I think we had it last week and we were choosing between a few photos because we wanted to showcase the fall colors because they're just beautiful at this time of year. And we had so many good ones and we couldn't decide what to use. We didn't have space to put them all inside the paper like in a color page. So we were really happy that we got to use this one on the front page this week because it was one of the top contenders, and we didn't really have a lot of space inside this week for color either. So we were glad that we got to showcase it right on the front page.
Absolutely. And we are going to switch. There's really no good transition for this, but we are going to switch now to the opinions section with Ken's article, weekly, of course, as always. And Ken's article this week sort of focuses on newspapers, accountability, the importance of attaching names to comments, articles, etc. Kira, what was your takeaway on this?
He, in his kind of first little column there, he talks a little bit about the importance of written journalism, and it kind of like pumps us up a little bit because it's like, oh yes, the journalists were important. So you can't disagree with that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a well-written article. It talks about kind of how things can get out of hand in anonymous comment sections and why it is important to have your name attached to things to keep things civil, right? So yeah, it's one that it's not quite as controversial as some of his religious or political columns that he sometimes writes about, but it's a good read still, so definitely give that one a look. On page 4, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah. There's really nothing, or at least not much, to disagree with here. It's really important that newspapers focus on presenting the facts and they have that accountability so that you know the paper is trustworthy. Of course, there are exceptions, as Ken mentions, in certain circumstances, and I've written stories as well where there was an exception to putting names in stories on the paper, like that conversion therapy article that I did, I think in 2018. It was a sensitive subject, and the person I interviewed was really concerned about just keeping themselves safe. So that was an instance in which, the person obviously wasn't named because it's such sensitive material, and, you want to make sure that the person is comfortable, they're protected, they're not in any sort of danger. So that's certainly a case in which we want to make sure that we do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that kind of, when you were talking about that interview, if that were to be on TV, that would be the kind of one where they would interview this victim and they would be all blacked out to save, to preserve their identity, because it can put you in danger or get you in trouble when you talk about certain sensitive things, obviously. So it would be, imagine when you're reading that story that this person is blacked out and their voice is distorted, kind of thing.
Yeah. So that typical thing that you imagine in those scenarios.
Yeah, exactly. There is a reason for those sometimes. But it is also important when you're sharing opinions and that kind of thing that you do put your name on it.
Absolutely. I think that pretty much covers that. So, sort of hard to segue from that into something like this, but with the turning of seasons, there is, of course, the coming of age and whatnot. And this week, we have a very special sort of preview, so to speak, for a 100th birthday of Alfred Newton of Neepawa. And his caregiver and close friend has extended an invitation to everybody who reads the paper or is in the area to send Alfred a birthday card. Now, it's not just the 100th birthday, which is special in its own, Alfred is also a World War II veteran, and we have a bit of details on his background on page 2, right there, as well as the email mailing address. So if you would like to send a birthday card, please do pick up the paper, write something up, send it to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I don't know him personally, but I do kind of know Alf because he goes to my church, so it was kind of a cool little shout out to him there. I saw on Facebook, it's like, oh, his 100th birthday is coming up. And I thought, oh, can that be true? I'm pretty sure we just celebrated his 95th in our church, but it is his 100th birthday coming up. He was born in 1920, so that's really cool. October 20th is the date, and I'm hoping to be able to get a card written up and sent to him as well, so that'll be pretty awesome. Moving on, we actually have a story that I wrote that we're going to talk about now.
Yes, would you like to take the lead on that?
I sure can. So every year we kind of do an update on schools, on their enrollment, and if there's any changes in the divisions and all that kind of thing. This year, obviously, there was a lot of changes in every school. So I reached out to the 4 school divisions in our coverage area. Beautiful Plains and Turtle River school divisions actually ended up getting back to me with some details. And some of the things I thought were interesting were enrollment didn't actually go up that much. Quite often, at least in Beautiful Plains school division, because some of the communities are growing, their enrollment goes up quite a bit. And this year, it kind of balanced out. It went down from the end of last year, and it was only up 1 from the beginning of last year. And that was basically because about 50 students ended up actually getting put into homeschooling. Their parents decided, well, this year is probably not a great year to be going into school with all of the kids and the potential for spreading COVID-19 and that kind of a thing. So there was, about 50 kids in the Beautiful Plains school division that ended up being homeschooled. And they're in Turtle River school division. The superintendent said that about 5 to 9% of their enrollment numbers, which she didn't actually end up giving me, but 5 to 9% of their enrollment numbers actually turned out to be deciding to be homeschooled, which is really interesting. That's kind of a big chunk, I would think. And obviously there are some who still wanted to be in the school division, still wanted to get those resources and the teacher learning and all that kind of thing, but they had health concerns, and they have a compromised immune system or something like that, where they shouldn't really be exposing themselves to the possibility of COVID-19. So there are some that are actually still involved in the school divisions, but they're also learning remotely as well. So that was kind of interesting to see those numbers and to see how students and staff have been adapting to the changes this year. You can definitely check that whole story out. It starts on page 6. Right beside Helen's recipe, always a good thing. Spicy apple cake this week, by the way. And did you have any input on that story?
I don't think a whole lot, but it was interesting to read this article, especially after doing a similar article on homeschooling. It was more of a conversational piece either last week or a few weeks prior, and it sort of validates those guesses on how much the homeschooling uptake has risen, whether it be people potentially thinking about prior to COVID-19, or just COVID-19 being the push to them uptaking homeschooling. And it's I certainly don't blame people for wanting to homeschool. Of course there's different benefits to it as opposed to going to public school in its own way regardless. But, parents want to make sure that their kids are safe. And, the schools, I'm sure, are doing everything that they can as well. But homeschooling, certainly, I can imagine, has that sort of extra ease of mind. You know that your kids are in a safe environment. Everybody, it's the same every day. You got all the people that you know. So it was interesting read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's definitely, obviously, merits to both sides of it, and but yeah, you had talked about some of the merits and the things behind homeschooling last week, and I kind of thought, well, we also want to make sure that the school divisions aren't left out and saying, well, we are doing everything we can. It's not just go homeschool your child because it's not safe in schools. They have implemented a lot of rules to make the school a lot safer this year. So there's both sides of it, definitely. Moving on, we have another story, somewhat COVID related. I had written a story back in March about a former local named Catherine Sage. She grew up in Neepawa and is living in Calgary. And she is a WestJet employee, flight attendant for WestJet. And they had laid off 7,000, I want to say, people back in March, April-ish time. Obviously, because of COVID-19, there weren't as many people traveling, so the airlines had to lay off a lot of people. And she was one of the people that she actually took a voluntary leave of absence. A lot of WestJet staff apparently volunteered to be on that layoff list, I guess, just because they wanted to make it easier for their employers and not to make them feel like we're just laying off all our employees, we're being really mean, but the employees wanted to help in any way they could, and that was one way. So she was off officially for 3 months. She took an extra month off. I think she had an injury or something. She wasn't able to go back to work for another month, so she hung around Neepawa for a couple months. She said she really enjoyed it, and it was really good to talk to her again. She's a great to talk to, and good to write about as well. She's back to work now. I don't know if I said that. That should have been my lead line. She's back to work. And that is what this story is about. Obviously her experience of being gone and then coming back, and as well her experience on the airlines and the kind of things that she's having to deal with every day. So that's actually a really interesting story. Not to toot my own horn. It's her story and it's interesting. So you can find that on page 9. Did you get a chance to read that one? Did you have any thoughts?
I did get a chance to read a bit of it. I actually got to the first whole bit there. I got through that. But yeah, it was an interesting read, and as someone who's only really flown once, and that was nerve-wracking in itself, I can't imagine being a passenger, much less a flight attendant now in these times when you have so much to worry about. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they're doing actually quite a bit for helping with making sure that people are safe. I actually highlighted a bit here. It says that WestJet implemented HEPA filters, whatever those are.
Yeah, I'm not sure
really
what that
know.
stands for. I just know that it filters the air and then it reintroduces fresh air every couple minutes. So that's a good thing.
Yep. As well, there's barriers on the seat backs. They fog the planes with disinfectant once the plane is empty. And they have masks mandatory as well, which is good. Mm-hmm. I was surprised, though, that they removed the social distancing, even with this stuff in place. I feel like that, if I was a passenger, would be a big concern for me personally, because, even if you're wearing a mask, it is important that you social distance so that your mask is working as well as it should be, because you still have to sort of give it that space so that it's not spreading. But
yeah, and I think she had said that if people are really uncomfortable with sitting really close to somebody, as long as the plane isn't packed to capacity, they will do their best to find another spot where there is some space for you. So they're trying to make everybody feel as safe and comfortable as possible. I think the HEPA filters are meant to kind of help with that, because obviously sitting in close quarters with people sharing the same air for a really long time, that makes the masks a little less effective. But once you got fresh air, clean air circulated in there every couple minutes, that really helps as well. I think that was kind of the aim for that. But also, and yeah, I totally understand that. I was actually surprised when they removed that empty middle seat mandate. But now I've lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
Oh well. Well, you can read the story and maybe see where I was going with that.
Find out, see if you can piece together what Kira's thoughts were on that.
I don't know. It just
I unfortunately can't help you there.
Sorry.
But we will move on then. We have a bit of a, I guess you could say, opinion piece from our local MP here, Dan Mazur, on the throne speech that was put on recently. Now, I don't remember exactly what date that was, but...
last week sometime, anyway.
Yeah, sometime last week. And Mazur, his opinion really was that the Federal Liberal Party was really just much of the same in the throne speech. One thing there that Mazur added as well, I should say before I get into one of the points here, is that a lot of the promises that were made are good, in Mazur's opinion. However, there was a great lack of detail on how it would be paid for example. So that was a big concern in the article here. One thing as well is that the pledge to plant 2 billion trees, which was in the throne speech as well, was made actually in the 2019 election campaign for the federal Liberals, and there has not been really any visible at all progress on that. Kira, what were your thoughts on this whole thing?
I mean, reading the story, it was exactly what I expected. Dan Mazur is obviously Conservative MP, and Justin Trudeau is a Liberal, is the Liberal Prime Minister. So obviously, almost every time Justin Trudeau says something or does something publicly, the Conservative MPs are all like, oh, that's dumb, don't do that, oh, what are you doing, right? And I mean, they have their valid points. It's their job to be the devil's advocate on this. It's their job to be the opposition, but it's more of the same. Justin Trudeau makes a speech, your local MP writes a story about how it's dumb, right? So basically, it's a little more of the same, and he does make some good points. There are a lot of good points in here about, obviously, some of the things that he promised but haven't happened, and some of the things that he is promising now that it's like, how is this going to happen, and all that kind of thing. There are some good points, so definitely read it. It's just don't expect it to be a radically different opinion than normal.
Yeah, that is a good point. And of course, yeah, there were some good points in the article as well, as you mentioned. I'm in no way conservative aligned or liberal aligned, because they're both way too far right for my taste. But the point about the lack of detail regarding how it's going to be paid for is a really good one, honestly. Like, what are they going to do to make sure that this does get paid for? Are they going to implement a wealth tax? Like, I don't know. They didn't really say. It was pretty vague all around. Mm-hmm. Like, the stuff that was proposed, of course, was good, but it's concerning when there's no real plan. Mm-hmm. So it's really just a whole lot of the same from both parties for me. Mm-hmm. The throne speech from the Liberals, and of course the reaction that's kind of to be expected. But I guess we'll have to see where it takes us. Yep. I don't know.
We'll see if maybe there's more details coming in the future. I don't know.
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
We still got quite a bit of time here, actually, but we have a local draw that we did. Actually, it was through the paper. It was held by the paper. On page 3, we had our summer shopping spree. We just did the draw yesterday, and I can say it was a lot of ballots. Like, it was a whole big tub full of, like, maybe like that size tub.
Yeah, like one of those big storage Tupperware container tubs.
Yeah, so it's about that wide, about like that deep.
Maybe
sort
a
of
little bit deeper.
Maybe a little
deeper.
deeper.
And then it was like mounded on top.
Yep.
It was like full. It was crazy the amount of ballots we got, which was great. We had this page of ads for 8 weeks, all of the businesses that were participating in the draw, and each business business, I think, what was it, 15 businesses?
Yep, 15.
They each gave $50 gift certificates. So the winner got $50 gift certificate from every single business on this list. So it was good to see people actually paid attention to this draw and saw that, oh, I could win like $750 worth of stuff. So a lot of people did enter in that, which was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't recall if we actually mentioned the winner's name.
No.
But Mervyn Russell was the winner there.
Mm-hmm.
Got the awards from Ken Waddell. And it was properly social distanced. You can see actually the photo on that page. Bit of a funny photo if you don't know the context. It'd be kind of interesting to see how people would react to the photo far in the future without context, just trying to figure out what the heck is going on here.
Why is this guy reaching so far and trying not to touch the other guy?
It was a good time. And sort of behind the scenes, you don't see it here, but after the draw was made, we actually had to sort through all of the ballots, see who had emails, who didn't, and that took about a good hour or so.
Hour
maybe,
and a half,
Yeah, hour and
almost,
a half. Yeah, it was quite the time, and we actually kind of made a game while we were sorting through, just to keep things a little bit spicy, interesting. We were, while sorting, counting which ones had emails and seeing what streak we could get of people having emails consecutively. And if someone didn't have an email, that would break the streak. So we were trying to go for high scores, see who could get the best. And I think we ended up having Owen in the lead with 10, if I remember correctly. Did he get 10? I think so. 10 or 9?
Yeah, there was a 9 or a 10. And I know you had 9. I think my highest was 7. Shucks. But yeah, I know for a while you two were tied at 9, and I can't remember if Owen broke it with 10 or not. But yeah, it was pretty intense sometimes. It was like, oh, this one has an email, this one has an email, this one has an email, we're on a streak! It was fun.
I kept getting breaks at 3, so I just stopped counting, and then it's like, oh, I've got 5. What? Oh my god, I might be able to break the streak, and then it's like, oh, nope, no email.
Stuck at
Darn.
6. Yeah.
Now that's all we had on the list, but we do have some time, so we actually have a coming up story. It's not fully in the paper this week, but on page 12, you get a little bit of a sneak peek at Bruise Brothers. And Kira, you were there in person, weren't you?
Yes, yeah, I got the call to go and take some pictures. Bruise Brothers has been closed since end of May to do some renovations. They figured, well, we're not making a ton of money at this point in time because of COVID. We can only do takeout, so not a lot of people are coming. And so we might as well just close and focus on our renovations and get them done as fast as possible. And they actually, I guess, finished about mid-August, but they've been waiting on some permits and all that kind of thing. So he called me up because all their renovations are done, and he's hoping that that they will be able to open very, very soon because they're just waiting on like 1 or 2 last permits that are supposed to be coming back any day now. But as soon as they are open, you will know. Mark is going to let us know, and we're going to make sure to get it in the paper, and he's going to have it on Facebook and signs up everywhere. So everybody who's been missing Bruise Brothers, their pizzas and their soups and their daily specials and their amazing sandwiches and their amazing desserts and their breakfasts and all that kind of thing, you're going to hopefully be able to get it soon. It's coming soon. But yeah, I was just, we didn't have a ton of space and color this week. So what I did was picked one of the pictures, and then I took a picture from, found a picture from back in, I think, March, before they closed down for the renovations, of kind of the same angle, just to compare the two. And there will be more pictures and there will be more information in next week's paper, so definitely look for that, because that is exciting news that it's almost there.
And if you couldn't tell, Kira's really excited for when they open again. Yeah. And a few of our other staff in the office have been excited as well. They've sort of been going back and forth like, oh, I hope they open right away so I can like get Bruise again. I love Bruise, and like I've never eaten there myself, I don't think yet, but it's certainly one of those local businesses that gets the office buzzing. So as well as a taste of the hopeful near future. You get a look back at the past as well every week with the Looking Back section on page 8, usually where it is. And this week, we take a look back specifically in the headline, 1970, Neepawa gets a new co-op service station. Now, this is a building that I'm familiar with in the community, but I never actually saw it as a gas station. I only ever saw it as a bookstore, and that's the same for you as well, isn't it, Kira?
Yeah, I feel like, I'm not sure if I remember specifically there being gas pumps there when I was really little, or if it's just that I knew that it was there, so I just always imagined that there was. But most vividly, I do remember it being that access to books, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember always walking up to the high school, walking home, and you would pass by that bookstore. Sometimes stop in, see what they got. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see it in the paper, photographed as a gas station, because it looks quite similar. Of course, it just has a few differences, you know, the co-op sign and all that. And I don't know if it's actually there, but it was, in our time, attached to what was the old co-op, according to present day, the grocery store, which is now at the highway. So it's quite interesting coming across this stuff as well. There's a bit of a personal family history in there this week for you too, isn't there?
Yeah,
on,
it's kind of cool.
1950.
My great uncle, actually two of my great uncles were mentioned because of a mistake apparently formerly printed in the press. But yeah, in 1950, I guess it was reported that William Argyle Paterson, I didn't actually know him personally, but he was always spoken about as Argyle, my uncle Argyle. He's my grandpa's brother. It was written that he had represented the Royal Canadian Navy in the Guard of Honor at the funeral of William Lyon Mackenzie King. However, that was a misprint, and that is what they are talking about in this little excerpt here. It was actually my other great uncle, Gerald Paterson, who was in the Royal Canadian Navy and was at this funeral. So that was really interesting because I never knew that, and it was kind of funny. It's always kind of cool to see little corrections in old papers, because you never think, oh yeah, they make mistakes. We occasionally have to put a correction in our paper, and it's kind of funny to go back and see ones in the years before, back in the day. But yeah, it was kind of cool to learn that my Uncle Gerald, what, am I reading that right? Oh yeah. My Uncle Gerald, who was in the Royal Canadian Navy, which I knew he was in the Navy, but I didn't know that he was at the funeral of William Lyon Mackenzie King. That's kind of cool. Yeah, and I read that, and then I read to the bottom, and it says both men are sons of Mr. and Mrs. W.J. Paterson of RR2 Neepawa. And it's funny because I'm still of RR2 Neepawa. I'm still on rural route number 2, so if you want to mail me a letter, I guess you can. You know that now.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see those bits in the paper, especially when it connects to somebody else in the community, somebody else in the office. As well, I have a couple quick minutes here, so I'll just shout this out and then we'll wrap it up. But for Remembrance Day in 1980, tulips from Holland were planted at the cenotaph. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, from Holland no less. And it was in thanks from the Holland government, that's where the bulbs actually came from, for those who served in the armed forces during World War II. So that was quite interesting, sort of a nice gesture from the Holland government there for our people that went over to help out. You can read that and more in the paper and on page 8. And we will say goodbye to you now. Once again, thank you for joining me, Casper Wehrhahn, and Kira Paterson, for the story behind the stories. If you would like to give us news tips or send us stories yourself or pictures, we accept all of them. Send that to news@neepawabanner.com. Feel free to give us a call, I should say, at 204-476-3401. Or, if you have ads, because we do rely on your advertising to keep this paper free and to keep it going, book an ad with ads@neepawabanner.com. Thank you, and have a good day.